Hey, what's going on, everyone? Today we have the first meta snapshot for set 11. We're going to go over 15 different team compositions that you probably should know on this patch if you want to climb a little bit. In this video, we'll go over what champions to play in these comps, what traits to activate, a couple tips and tricks here and there, and of course, what items to put on them. So let's just get right into it. So starting off at the top in the S tier, we have a Bard comp. Bard Reroll is so disgusting right now. Very, very powerful stuff. Lillia Invoker is going to be the second build we're going to focus on, and then we have Aphelios, Yone, and Kog'Maw Reroll. Bunch of rerolls in the S tier right now. The only 4-cost comp is Lillia, but there are ways to make other 4-cost comps work. It's just that reroll definitely is pretty popular right now. Next up in the A tier, we have another Bard comp, and then we have Dryad Reroll, Alune Invoker Reroll, Arcanist Warden, another 4-cost comp, and then Ghostly 4-cost. I don't think I need to tell you all that this is also a 4-cost comp. In the B tier, we have Lux Reroll, Duelist Reroll, Inkshadow Kaisa, Storyweaver, and Kha'Zix. I'd mainly focus more on the S and A tiers, and as the set goes on, we're going to be updating this every single Friday for the rest of the set. We will be adding more and more comps to this list, so the best way to stay updated on that is to head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta. But let's get right into Storyweaver Bard at the top. So this comp revolves around Bard and Tahm Kench. They are both mythics, and you may notice something a little goofy already. So on our Bard, we do have 2 Guinsoo's Rage Blades. Those are just by far Bard's best items right now. If we go to the stats, we go to champions, and then we type in Bard, you'll see that Rage Blade is just really, really powerful on him right now. And then second, I'd say like Hextech Gunblade. I think like Quicksilver deserves some mention here. I think no one picks Quicksilver enough, but you could tell already the play rate of Guinsoo's Rage Blade is 107%. Which means that people are like building it so much that it's like messing up the stats a little bit. But that's how you can tell that like Double Rage Blade is super duper popular on Bard. It's because everyone is literally building multiple copies on him. And the reason why it's so good, and same with Hextech Gunblade is so good, is that notice how it gives attack damage and ability power on the Hextech Gunblade. Guinsoo's gives ability power and attack speed. Well, Bard pretty much makes use of all of those stats. So he gets attack damage bonus and magic damage bonus as an on-hit for the next couple attacks whenever he casts his ability. So these 2 items just like complement him really, really well. And then whenever you have a scaling champion, as in scaling throughout the fight, having some healing on them is really, really powerful. But let's say you cannot get Double Rage Blade. What item should you put on Bard? Let's say you only have the Guinsoo's and the Hextech Gunblade. Well, Giant Slayer is a pretty good option. Static Shiv's a pretty good option. Quicksilver is another good option as well. These items are all allowing him to like scale up, get a lot of Rage Blade stacks, or deal like a ton of damage. Next up we have is Tahm Kench. Tahm Kench is going to be the main tank here. So just throw 3 generic tank items on him. I wouldn't really grief my game too hard to like get super specific items on Tahm Kench. Once you have your Bard set up, like Tahm Kench kind of just takes anything. Whatever you built in the early game to slam, that's the items you're going to put on him. But obviously, like a Stone Plate would be really good because you don't run like too many tanks in this comp. It's really just Bard and Nautilus, like Riven and Nico. They don't really do that much. But you'd cap off this comp with 5 Mythic. Pretty solid way to play this. You just add in Hui and Nico. Hui is a really interesting champ, in my opinion, because of the Artist buff. Artist allows you to kind of paint a champion, so you get like a copy of an extra champion on your bench after a couple turns. But it's all really good stuff. Sivir's running the comp, so you get attack speed for your bards. After you get your mythics in, you could add in Storyweaver. Storyweaver does give you the Kale, and it gives you a bunch of complementary synergies. For example, Riven gives Tahm Kench Bruiser, and then you also get Arcanist from Nico and the Zoe. At 2 Arcanists, you give 20% ability power to the rest of your team, so it's overall like a solid team buff. For your leftover items, throw them on Nautilus or Hui, because the bulk of your power is going to be coming from the Bard. Going back to the comp, though, you want to do what's called a 3-cost reroll pattern, so level to 7 at 3-5 or 4-1. In case you missed it, I covered this in the recent leveling guide that we posted, I believe, on Wednesday. And then look to 2-star your Bard and Tahm Kench at this point. After that, build your economy back up to 50 gold and then do what's called a slow roll, which is just rolling down to 50 gold every single turn until you hit Bard and Tahm Kench 3-star. Some augments you could think about is getting like Prismatic Ticket. It's a really good reroll augment. Pumping Up, really good for giving attack speed. Trade Sector, really good for rerolls. Lesser Champion Duplicator. Anything that gives you gold or free rolls is going to be great for this build because you really make good use of it. If you want more details or like little tricks with a comp, head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta. We give a bunch of different item recommendations. We have like a separate how to play section and a bunch of other fun stuff as well. But going on into the next comp, we have the Lillia Invoker build. one of my favorites because Annie's so cool. Like, I think Annie turning into Tibbers is one of the funnier things that happens in this set. But you pretty much just go 4 Invoker and 5 Mythic. There's also like a 6 Invoker version, but the build's going to be a little different. So in this version of the comp we have the 5 Mythic, 4 Invoker. But if you want to go for 6 Invoker, the build is a little bit different. For example, on our Lillia right now, you see that she has a blue buff. Invoker gives so much mana regeneration that typically when you run 6 Invoker, you don't really need mana regeneration at all. So what you do is like take out the blue buff and add another damage item. For example, like a Jeweled Gauntlet, maybe like a Giant Slayer, things like that. And then of course you would run whoever you're missing from before. So in this picture, that'd be Janna and Alune. And then you'd probably drop down to 3 Mythic. But the 5 Mythic version is very good. It's probably slightly better, but depends on what units you're kind of hitting that game. Just go 3 item Lillia, 3 item Annie. If you have extra room, 3 item Silas isn't bad either. Pretty much you just flex your tanks a little bit. So whoever you 2-star first, Nautilus, Silas, or Annie, that's who you're going to be putting items on. The only small variation in items in the front line is that Silas can use like a Bloodthirster because Silas does like a tiny bit of damage. So he's able to sustain himself up a little bit. One other thing you need to make sure you have is magic resistance shredding. So that could come from a static shiv on your backline, such as on Azir or Hui, or getting like an Ionic Spark for your front line. Both work. I think the static shiv is a little more consistent because sometimes your front line dies and then you don't have the Ionic Spark effect anymore. But overall, this is kind of like the crux of the team. Oh, by the way, keep in mind, I've not gone over this yet, but Exalted changes builds up a tiny bit. Sometimes if your primary unit shares like some Exalted traits, you could run some Exalted units in the mid game to kind of like get extra XP or even have extra damage in the late game. But some great item holders for this Lillia comp is going to be the Ahri, Teemo, Zyra, Kindred, and Alune in the early game. Alune, I think, is the best one because she is a 3 cost and an Invoker, and she's not in the final comp, so you could just put items on Alune, not feel bad about selling her, and then once you get Lillia, item her up, and then make her super powerful. This is a level 8 comp, so you want to do what's called like a standard leveling pattern. In case you missed the video from before that I mentioned, you could just head on up to the top of the website and click leveling, and then there's like a quick little leveling guide over here for standard leveling. We pretty much go over everything there. Let's move on into the next comp though. We have Aphelios Reroll. Aphelios Reroll, overall decently solid. It revolves around Thresh and Aphelios, and you just want to do a 3-cost reroll pattern for this, so you want to get to level 7 as efficiently as possible with as much gold as possible, and slow roll for Aphelios 3-star and Thresh 3-star. If we look at the 3-cost 3-star average placement right now, you'll see that like Thresh and Aphelios are both decently high. A 3.57 or like a 3.41, super duper duper solid. And then recommended items, like the common ones is going to be Rage Blade, Infinity Edge, things like that. But really any attack damage item works well. Like Deathblade, probably a little underrated. Same with Runons. Both these items perform super well, but I'd say go like Guinsoo's Rage Blade and then 2 other attack damage items and you're going to be good to go. By the way, I don't know if you've noticed a theme yet, but Hextech Gunblade is in a lot of backline carries right now. You might be wondering why, and the reason is because there's a lot of backline damage. For example, we've all had like a Kha'Zix jump to the back and just hit our main damage dealer in the back. Maybe Alune is hitting us from the back as well. And then in order to kind of prevent that, having a Hextech Gunblade is super, super solid because your carry just heals all the way back up, and then that little chip damage doesn't add up and eventually kill your entire backline. So that's why people are building Hextech Gunblade a lot right now. You could secondary carry this with an Ashe, because you could run Porcelain with the Amumu, and of course you get Sniper. You definitely do want the Sniper bonus whenever you're running Aphelios carry, and Ashe is just going to be the best person to do that. Kog'Maw in the early game is going to be a decent item holder though, because it's a Sniper, and then you could sell it, replace it with Aphelios once you get him. And then you want to round out the comp with some Faded. So who are the Fadeds? It's going to be Syndra, Ahri, and Set. Before you get Set, you could play something like a Kindred, but obviously Set's going to be the main person because it is a legendary unit, and then you could throw like whatever items you want on Set. Set's mainly an attack damage champion right now, but you could throw like a bunch of utility items on him or even tank items. He could pretty much hold anything. Whenever you have a legendary unit, you don't really tailor items for them, especially if you're going for a 3-cost reroll. You normally can't afford to get like a 2-star legendary, so throwing like some support items on Set, more than fine. Another thing you need in this comp is some sort of armor reduction. So Last Whisper on Ashe is going to be pretty good. If you can't get that, then get like an Even Shroud on your front line. There are some other variations of the comp, but at level 7, it's kind of like this comp -1. You run like Thresh, Aphelios, Amumu, Ashe, Syndra, and Ahri, and then you play either 1 Warden or 1 Behemoth, depending on what you have. It doesn't have to be one of the legendaries. And then you look to 3-star Aphelios and Thresh. If you are able to 3-star Amumu, great. If not the end of the world. Keep leveling up once you get Aphelios and Thresh. You kind of only 3-star Amumu if you have like infinite gold, or if you just get it for free and get it before you hit Aphelios and Thresh. Good item holders are going to be attack damage item holders, so like Sivir, Senna, Caitlyn going to be perfect for that. I like playing this comp a lot when there's a portal that gives a ton of items because you have so many different people who can hold items. So you have Thresh, you have Aphelios, of course, and then Ashe is very, very solid on her own. And Ashe is like one of those units that doesn't need much to get going. 2 sniper, 2 porcelain, going to be more than enough. So putting the items on her is like super efficient in this comp at least. And then of course you have a bunch of legendaries you could itemize in the future, and even Syndra, you know, like even though she doesn't have Arcanist, like if you have like tons of items because like portals or encounters give you like crap tons of items, like why not? You know, she's still a 4 cost at the end of the day. Next up we have is the Umbral Reroll comp. This is going to be Yone and Alune. And they're going to be complemented by Sylas and Kayn. Kayn's going to be there for Reaper, Sylas going to be there for Umbral. So you have the 4 Umbrals in Yorick, Sylas, Yone, and Alune. Just make sure you kind of put them in the Umbral pattern. It changes from game to game. Sometimes it's on the left side, sometimes it's on the right side. So just make sure your main carries are on that crescent. So Alune, Yone, Kayn, and Sylas, those are going to be the main 4 that you always want on the Umbral crest. So if it's on the other side, move them to the other side. But Yone is so disgusting strong. He works kind of similarly to the last set where you just build like a bunch of frontline melee items on him. So Titan's Resolve going to be great. Hand of Justice going to be great. Actually, Hand of Justice is like more than perfect because from the Reaper buff, you get critical strike chance on your ability already. So adding a Hand of Justice adds more critical strike chance. That's why people like that healing item a lot over something like a Bloodthirster. But both options work. You probably just want one healing item. Titan's Resolve, really good because he does a lot of auto attacks, so you want it to stack up really quickly. And then Rageblade, just a good auto attack item in general. You could also go something like a Quicksilver on Yone. That item works really well too. If we actually go back into the data here, Yone averaging a 3.62 at 3-star. And if we scroll down a bit, you'll see like, yeah, Quicksilver, best performing item. And it's mainly just because he's an auto attack champion. I'm actually surprised Bloodthirster is like slightly outperforming Hand of Justice. I know the shield from Bloodthirster is really good, but just like math-wise, if you're a Reaper, Hand of Justice has to be better, right? Maybe Hand of Justice is just a bit weak right now. But of course on Kayn, same combo of items, like Hand of Justice, Titans, like some healing items, Sylas, generic tank items, plus the Bloodthirster. You'll notice that Bloodthirster is built on Sylas a ton. It's one of his most popular items, despite being like a 4-cost tank. I guess it's kind of like a tank, but like kind of like a bruiser-ish tank. Also a bruiser, coincidentally, but you all know what I mean. The leveling pattern for this comp is very similar to all the other 3-cost reroll comps we went over before, so get to level 7 as safely as possible, stabilize with the 2 stars, and then econ back up, slow roll until you hit everyone 3-star. If you want some item backups, here's some options here and some like generally good augments on these characters. Harmesis probably going to be my favorite because you have so many healing items. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 healing items, 5 healing items with the Alune. If you just have Harmesis, you don't need those healing items anymore. You could just add more damage and the comp it saves you 4 items essentially. Speaking of Alune, almost forgot to talk about her. So again, I mentioned before, when you play a lot of Invokers, you don't need the mana item, but since we only have 2 Invoker, getting a Spear of Shojin, very efficient on her. Morello also good because she attacks the largest row of units and spreads out her damage pretty evenly. So Morello is really good at like ticking people down a bunch, and then Yone jumps in, kills them. Very solid combo overall. But let's go into the next comp, which is Kog'Maw Reroll. Probably the most popular 1-cost reroll right now. I'm pulling that statistic out of my butthole, but we could actually just check here. So we could look at play rate and also like 3-star rate, and then we have to multiply these numbers together. Okay, maybe it's not the most popular, but it's pretty far up there. Most importantly, at 3-star, it's going to be at a 4.16, which is more than enough. Combine that with the Cho'Gath 4.07. Look at the recommended items here. Blue buff, everyone's building that. Nasher is also pretty solid. Obviously, like you want some damage, so like even though the average placement on like Jeweled Gauntlet, Deathcap, Giant Slayer are a bit lower, you want some sort of damage on him. So like you definitely need that to combine with the other items. And you'll notice there's like a similar pattern over here. Cho'Gath, just generic tank items. By the way, Dragonclaw is a really underrated item right now. I think it's like probably one of the best tank items that like typically isn't built. I think the numbers on it are just like too good right now. Round this comp off with 4 Behemoth. Behemoths are just going to give you a ton of frontline. And another reason why you go for them is because Malphite's also a Behemoth. So you just go like Cho'Gath, Malphite, Kog'Maw, Reroll, and then ideally you hit all 3 of them. Sometimes you could even get Caitlyn if you need a secondary carry. Not that important, but If you have it for free, you have it for free. And then round the comp off with like 3 Mythic by adding in Neeko. You could play like other champions as well. It doesn't have to be Neeko, but it's easy to get her because she's a 2-cost unit. So normally when you do this comp, you're like level 5. So if you run something like Cho'Gath, Malphite, Kog'Maw, and Caitlyn, just add in the Neeko. You get your 3 Mythics, very simple to do. And then you get to level 6, add in maybe like a Shen. Level 7, add in the Ornn, and then like level 8, 9. You could go like 4 Sniper if you want. It depends what augments you get. Maybe you get a +1 of an augment. You could just play random legendary units. You could swap the Neeko for like a more powerful Mythic unit and then build synergies off of that. Like the options are almost endless. But one important thing to go over is the reroll pattern for the 1-cost reroll, because it's a bit different than all the other ones. You want to like get as much interest as possible and do not press the level up button and then roll to 30 gold at level 4 at stage 3-1. The reason why you want to do that is because you want to get a lot of copies of 1-cost units, and that's the last stage you'll be level 4 on. And then after that, build Econ back up at level 5 up to 50 gold, and then slow roll for 3-star 1-cost. Pretty much all you need to do there. Next comp up, we're going to go over the A tier. So we have Bard Mythic Reroll right now. This is going to be with 7 Mythic. So pretty much it's the same Bard comp we saw before. Same leveling pattern. You go for Bard and Tahm Kench, except you want to go for 7 Mythic instead. You go for this comp if you're able to get an early Hui. Maybe you have a Mythic Emblem. Mythic Emblem's going to be really powerful with this build. If you want to know who the best Mythic Emblem user is, you could go to the stats, then items, and then type in Mythic Emblem. And then we'll see that the common champions are going to be like Annie, Azir, Silas. Really good champions that use it is going to be Set, Azir, and Kai'Sa. Going on into the next comp, though, we have is the Dryad Reroll. This is just going to be a Gnar Kindred duo carry. Just go for 3-star Gnar, 3-star Kindred, 4 Reaper. That's going to buff up Kindred a bunch. And then just go generic melee carry damage items on Gnar, blue buff plus 2 damage items AP on Kindred. Then you just fill in 4 Reaper, 4 Dryads. There aren't that many units with those traits. You just plug and play them. And that's going to be pretty much the comp there. Do a 2-cost reroll. And that's really all you need to know about that comp. Alune Invoker reroll. It's just going to be one of those 6 Invoker Alune comps. Really, all you do is type in 6 Invoker, and then in your team builder in-game, just like add all of them to there, because there are only 6 Invokers, so you kind of need all 6 of them to get going. If you have +1 Invoker from something, like, yeah, that's going to help a bunch. Let's actually check the Invoker stats. So overall, they average like 4.45, 4.48. Not bad, not great, but that's another easy way to get 6 Invokers so that you don't have to rely on hitting Azir. But pretty much just play this comp, add in an Umbral, throw 3 damage items on Alune, and you're going to be good to go there. Next comp up we have is the Arcanist Warden. Just go as many Arcanists as you can. People like to play around with 4 Warden. You literally do the same exact thing I showed you with Invokers. You just type in here Warden, click the expensive Wardens, Arcanist, click the expensive Arcanist, put that in your team builder, do your roll down, all the units get highlighted, and then you just buy them, play them. And generally, they're pretty easy comps. Like, good item holders in the early game is going to be Lux. She's not in too many final comps, and she also, like, uses pretty much the same items as Syndra. So if we reset this, throw in Syndra. Syndra really likes blue buff because she has 30 mana. Any unit with, like, 40 or less mana generally prefers blue buff over the Shojin, in my opinion, because they just get, like, a ton of casts off. After that, you want to add in Faded. Ahri is already an Arcanist and a Faded unit, so you really just need one more. Ideally, it's going to be Set, but sometimes you play Thresh in the meantime. And then Syndra's going to be pumping out a lot of damage with that little Faded buff. Next comp up we have is going to be 4 Ghostly. This one's kind of just like a value comp. Just play Kayn and Morgana, 6 Ghostly. I think the most important item is going to be the Morello on your Morgana, just like some sort of Shojin Morello. And then a bunch of healing items on Kayn. Kayn should sustain for a little bit. Morgana should burn people down with the Anivia ultimate that she kind of casts out, and then the Morello ticks are going to complement her a lot as well. Standard leveling for this because you're going for 4 costs. And then next up we have is the B tier. B tiers, I wouldn't really pay too much attention to these. They are viable, they are playable, but like if we look at the data, the first comp we saw up there was, what was it, Lux reroll. So let's look at champions. Let's type in Lux, and we'll see like the 3-star average placement is a 4.01. It's not bad, but it's not great, because if we compare her to like the 1-cost reroll, like getting Kog'Maw Reroll going at a 4.16, where Kog'Maw Reroll is much, much easier to hit, you'd rather go that than like one of the 2-cost reroll builds. It's not that like Lux is bad or anything. It's just much easier to hit the Kog'Maw, you know? Look at the 3-star rate. 6.7% of the time you play her, and you only see her in 0.6 games. Like, no one's really playing that comp, you know, but it is viable in some situations. If you have like a really good reroll augment, you have perfect Lux items, and you have a lot of copies of Lux, like, yeah, definitely go for it. But right now, in terms of 2-cost reroll, not too many of them are quite viable right now. I'd say the most popular one would have to be like the Gnar and Kindred one, but ironically, they are at like the bottom of the stack right now. Other things people like to do is like maybe the Senna, but I don't think it's like that good. It's decent, but you need the right start for it. And then Nico and Shen, people only play them because of their hero augment. Other comps is Storyweaver Reroll. This one's just like a 1-cost reroll. Actually decently solid. Sivir's pretty good. Might have to revisit this one a little bit later. But this is just 1-cost reroll, Sivir and Garen. Next comp up we have is Duelist Reroll. By the way, if you ever get a lot of Lockets, Duelist is really good. It used to be a popular build back when Locket was buildable before and Duelist was like a trait from the past. People will just spam Lockets and play Duelist. I saw someone get 2 Lockets from like a training dummy with Duelist, and it just absolutely destroyed everything like it did in the past. Kind of nostalgic to kind of think about. After that, we have Inkshadow Kai'Sa, decent comp there. Kha'Zix reroll. Let's look at all the 1 costs again. Kha'Zix 4.77, yeah, not the best comp to kind of go for. I think they could just like nerfed it too much, but if you get it for free, you get it for free. But that's pretty much going to round up all the comps we're going to go over this week. So obviously, focus on the S tier the most. Mainly, it's going to be reroll. I know some people don't like that, but some people do. I personally am a fan of like some reroll being viable. I think it's mainly just because 4 costs are harder to play at the start of the set. I guarantee you, like in the next couple patches, once people get better and better at the game, more people are going to be playing around with like 4-cost flex builds. Like once people discover how to do that, that typically happens around like the 2-week mark at the start of every set. But at the start, like people play the easier comps because it's like hard to kind of look at everything, switch between different comps because it's just like a new experience for everyone. So that's probably why reroll does a bit better. Early game's a bit more important at the start of sets also because not everything is so optimized. But let me know what your favorite comps are, both from this list and maybe ones that are not on this list down in the comments below. We will be updating this every single Friday. And of course, if you want like all the details such as like the how to play section, like substitute items, things like that, head on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta. And for all your data needs, go to teamfight.lol. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.